Imagine pulling into a lonely gas station after midnight. The only light comes from a flickering neon sign. There's no one around, except a man standing completely still in the shadows, watching you. You fuel up, you drive away. But hours later, at a crowded travel stop, someone opens your back seat and finds him. He never left. He's been with you the whole time. This is a terrifying true story of survival instinct and a silent passenger who almost got away with something far worse. Hey everyone, welcome to my very first video on YouTube. I've been a longtime fan of Mr. Nightmare and his ability to make your skin crawl with nothing more than a voice and a story. That's what inspired me to finally start this channel, a place where I'll be sharing real stories that are creepy, unsettling, and sometimes downright terrifying. So if you're into true scary stories, mysterious encounters, or just want something that makes you double check your back seat before you drive, you're in the right place. Let's get into tonight's story, a chilling encounter from Texas in 2004. It was just after midnight when Sarah, a 26-year-old nurse, pulled off the nearly deserted Texas highway. She was returning home from a family visit and had already been driving for hours. Her gas tank was dangerously low, and the GPS hadn't shown another station for miles. She finally spotted one, a small, run-down gas station that looked frozen in time. The neon open sign buzzed dimly, barely hanging on, and the pavement was cracked and empty. Only one pump worked. As Sarah got out of her car, she felt it immediately. Something was off. Standing near the restrooms was a man. He wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, just watching. Not pacing, not smoking, not looking at a phone. Just standing in the shadows, still calm, too calm. Sarah decided to keep her distance. She hurried inside to pay, where a bored clerk didn't even look up from the TV behind the counter. Just a quiet, "That'll be 20. When she came back out, man was gone. Sarah wasted no time. She filled her tank, got back in the car, locked the doors, and drove off. But the feeling didn't leave her. In fact, it got worse. You know that feeling you get when something's behind you? That gut instinct you can't explain. That was Sarah for the next hour. No cars on the road, no reason to feel watched. But her skin prickled. Her heart was racing. She kept glancing at the rearview mirror. It wasn't until she reached a brightly lit travel plaza, the kind with fast food, vending machines, and clean bathrooms, that she finally exhaled. Still, she felt paranoid. She asked the cashier, a young guy maybe in his early 20s, if he could just check her car. He looked confused, but agreed. They walked outside, and when he opened the back door, he recoiled. Curled up behind the driver's seat was the same man from the gas station, silent, staring. In his hand was a long knife. The cashier sprinted back inside, locking the doors and calling 911. When police arrived, the man was still in the car, not fighting, not speaking, just sitting there like he belonged. Turns out he had a criminal record, assault, breaking and entering, and even an attempted abduction charge. He had slipped into Sarah's car when she went inside to pay, and if she hadn't listened to that little voice in her head telling her something was wrong, she might never have made it home. Stories like this are why we should always trust our instincts. Sarah didn't know why she felt off, but that feeling saved her life. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, please consider liking the video and subscribing. And again, shout out to Mr. Nightmare, who inspired me to start sharing these kinds of stories. Let's move to the second story. There is a strange emptiness to the Nevada desert at night, an eerie silence that seems to stretch for miles in every direction. On a cold October evening in 1991, a man named Tom was driving through one of those long, unlit stretches of highway on his way to Reno. He hadn't seen another car in nearly an hour, and his gas tank was dipping dangerously close to empty. Relief washed over him when he saw the glowing lights of an isolated gas station just off the road, its sign buzzing softly in the dark. The place looked frozen in time, a two-pump station with a small store and a faded Pepsi machine outside. He pulled up, got out, and stretched his legs, calling out for service. The station advertised full service, but no one came. The air was unusually still, and though all the lights inside the store were on, there wasn't a soul in sight. Puzzled, Tom stepped inside. The bell above the door rang, but no one answered. Behind the counter, a cup of coffee sat on a napkin, still steaming. A pack of cigarettes was halfway opened beside it, and a pair of reading glasses rested next to the register. It looked like someone had just stepped away, but where had they gone? Tom called out louder, walking slowly down the single aisle lined with dusty snacks and outdated magazines. Nothing. The back door was closed, and there were no signs of a struggle. No noise, no explanation. Getting increasingly uneasy, he went back outside, filled his tank quickly, and left some cash on the counter. As he pulled away, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, terribly wrong. Days later, back at home, Tom saw a segment on the local news. A gas station attendant, Robert Hanley, had gone missing in the Nevada desert, the same station, the same night. The report said there was no sign of forced entry, no blood, no evidence of a robbery. The only things left behind were his wallet, his glasses, and a cup of coffee still warm. To this day, no one knows what happened to Robert Hanley. The gas station was shut down a few years later, abandoned like a forgotten relic. Travelers still report strange occurrences there, flickering lights, cold drafts, and a sense of being watched when they pass by. Some say it was a robbery gone wrong. Others whisper about something more sinister, that the desert swallowed him whole, or that he simply walked into the night and never returned. But one thing's for sure, Tom will never forget that night, or the chilling realization that he may have been the last person to see Robert alive. Before we move to story 3, if you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button. It was the kind of night that made your skin crawl. The rain was pouring in sheets. The wind howled like a warning, and lightning lit up the mountains around rural Oregon like flashbulbs from some unseen camera. Jeff, a gas station attendant working the graveyard shift just off a remote stretch of highway near the base of the Cascade Range, was used to quiet nights. Boring ones. Usually, he spent hours reading old car magazines and sipping lukewarm coffee while the storm howled outside. But that night felt different. The air was heavier, like it was holding its breath. Around 2:30 a.m., he noticed movement outside. A figure was coming down the road. No headlights, no car, just a person. At first, Jeff thought it was his imagination. But then he saw her clearly under the flickering canopy light, a barefoot woman soaked to the bone, with tangled dark hair plastered to her face. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a torn jacket and pajama pants. She staggered into the station like she was sleepwalking. Jeff rushed out to help her. "Hey, are you okay? Did you get into an accident?" he asked. She didn't respond, just looked at him with wide, empty eyes, then whispered, "He's still out there." Her voice was barely audible over the wind. Jeff led her inside and offered her a towel and a seat near the space heater. She trembled as she sat down, staring at the glass door like something was going to burst through it at any second. Jeff pressed for more information. "Were you in a crash? Is someone chasing you?" Again, all she said was, "He's still out there." Concerned and a little spooked, Jeff called the county sheriff's office. They said a deputy was on the way, but it would be at least 30 minutes due to the storm and the winding roads. As they waited, Jeff tried to keep her calm. He gave her his coat, offered her something warm to drink. She never touched the mug, just kept shivering, whispering something under her breath he couldn't quite make out. Something about trees, about someone watching. At one point, she stood up suddenly and said, "I need to go back. He's waiting." Jeff put himself between her and the door. "No one's going anywhere," he said. "Just wait for the deputy." And then, just like that, she was gone. Jeff swore he never saw her move. One second she was there, the next, the door was wide open, wind howling inside, and the road empty. He ran outside with a flashlight, called for her, searched around the side of the building. Nothing, not even footprints in the wet gravel. The deputy arrived 20 minutes later. Jeff told him everything. The woman, her soaked clothes, her words. Her sudden disappearance. The deputy's expression changed. A week earlier, a young woman had been reported missing. Her car had gone off the highway during a storm not far from the gas station. They found it at the bottom of a steep ravine, smashed to pieces. Her body had never been recovered. When Jeff was shown a photo, he felt cold all over. It was her. The barefoot girl in the torn jacket. A search party returned to the area near the gas station, and just behind the property line, they discovered a single waterlogged shoe in the brush, a match to the one she'd been wearing in the picture. Her remains were found not long after, just beyond the tree line. Jeff quit his job a month later. To this day, truckers and night drivers passing through during storms sometimes report seeing a woman walking barefoot along that same stretch of road, vanishing into the trees when headlights hit her. Some say she's still trying to make it back to the gas station, the last warm place she ever saw. It was just past midnight on a warm June night in 2012 when Megan, a 24-year-old nursing student, pulled off the highway into a small-town Ohio gas station. She'd been driving back from a friend's wedding a few towns over and was already regretting not staying the night. The roads were quiet, almost too quiet, and every turn felt more isolated than the last. The gas station she found was the only one for miles, one of those old, single-building stations surrounded by nothing but woods and darkness. She got out to fill up her tank, yawning as she waited for the pump. That's when she noticed a man walking slowly across the lot from the far side of the building, tall, wearing a baseball cap low over his face and carrying something in his hands. A camcorder. He didn't say anything at first. Just walked up and pointed the camera directly at her. The red recording light was on. "Hey there," he said after a moment, his voice weirdly upbeat. "Where are you headed tonight?" Megan froze. Her hand was still on the gas pump, but her heart had started to race. "Just heading home," she said cautiously. He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You look nice, real nice. You mind if I ask your name?" "You'll look great on tape." She laughed nervously, trying to brush him off. "I really don't want to be filmed, sorry." She turned slightly, angling her body away from him, pretending to be busy with her phone. But he stepped closer, camera still on her. "Come on," he said. "I just like documenting things. You never know when it might be someone's last night." That sentence hit her like a punch to the stomach. She didn't respond. Just yanked the nozzle out, slammed it back onto the pump, and bolted inside the station store. The clerk behind the counter looked up and immediately noticed how shaken she was. "There's a guy outside filming me," Megan whispered. "He won't leave me alone." The clerk's face darkened. "He's been doing that all week," he said quietly. "Always shows up late, always targets women traveling alone. We've called the cops, but by the time they get here, he's gone." Megan peered through the window. The man was still there, pacing slowly in front of her car, still recording. "I'm not going back out there," she said. The clerk nodded and locked the doors. "You don't have to." "I'll call the sheriff again." They waited. For almost 20 minutes, the man loitered, sometimes filming the building, sometimes peering through the windows, always silent. And then, without a word, he walked off into the darkness, disappearing behind the trees near the edge of the lot. When deputies arrived, they searched the area but found nothing. No sign of him, No footprints, no car, nothing. Just eerie silence. A few days later, Megan saw something that turned her blood cold. On a community bulletin board online, a missing persons post had gone up. 2 women from towns nearby, both last seen at different gas stations late at night, both vanished without a trace. One of the women had been captured on CCTV, talking to a man holding a camcorder. Same man, same hat, same build. The case is still open, but no arrests have ever been made. No one knows who the man is, or where the tapes he filmed ended up. Megan now refuses to travel alone at night, especially in unfamiliar towns. And she always checks the corners of every parking lot she stops in. Because somewhere out there, a man is still recording, and he hasn't been caught. It was just after 3:00 a.m. in a small Florida town when Daniel, a 22-year-old gas station attendant, began his usual closing routine. The graveyard shift was quiet, as always, just the occasional trucker grabbing coffee or locals swinging by for late-night snacks. The station was surrounded by nothing but dark stretches of road and thick, humid air. He liked the peace, even if it got boring. What he did not know was that this night would be anything but peaceful and nearly his last. As he restocked the cooler in the back, Daniel heard the bell above the front door ring. Then another, footsteps, fast, heavy. Before he could even step out, he was face to face with 2 men in ski masks, one holding a crowbar, the other a small handgun. Back, now, the gunman ordered, jabbing the weapon toward Daniel's chest. Hands raised, Daniel backed into the walk-in cooler. They forced him inside, zip-tied his hands behind his back, and slammed the heavy steel door shut. The last thing he saw was one of them grinning at him, holding a red gas can. Inside, the temperature dropped fast. The cooler was soundproof, and Daniel knew no one outside would hear him scream. His heart pounded as he listened to the faint echoes of smashing glass, drawers being yanked open, shelves collapsing. Then came the sound he'd only ever heard in fire drills, the splashing of liquid, gasoline. He kicked at the door with all the force he had, screaming through clenched teeth. No use. Solid steel, airtight. In total darkness, his breathing grew shallow. Then came the sound he was dreading, the flick of a lighter, silence, then flames. The cooler grew hot, fast. The fire outside raged as smoke began to seep in through the cracks around the door. Daniel's eyes burned. He dropped to the floor, twisting violently until his zip tie snapped enough for him to wriggle free. He pounded again and again on the door, now searing hot to the touch. The air was running out. He knew if someone didn't show up in the next few minutes, he was going to die in that freezer, burned alive in a metal tomb. Just then, through the faint crack in the door, came the sound of sirens. Fire trucks, tires screeching, voices shouting, water spraying. The flames were extinguished just in time. When firefighters pried the door open, they found Daniel unconscious but alive. His hands bloodied from pounding and his face streaked with soot and tears. The building was nearly gutted. The security footage, saved miraculously by an off-site backup system, showed the 2 men dousing the store in gas and arguing. Apparently, one wanted to leave Daniel locked up. The other had suggested something worse. Thankfully, they left before carrying out whatever they had planned next. Police later tracked down the suspects through a pawn shop where they tried to sell stolen lottery tickets. Both had long rap sheets, including violent robbery and arson. Daniel survived, but he was never the same. He left his job the next day and never worked a night shift again. He moved 3 counties over and doesn't even pump gas at night anymore. Too many flashbacks, too much panic. Sometimes when he's driving past an old convenience store, he says he can still smell the gasoline. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, please consider liking the video and subscribing. I've got more real-life horror stories coming soon. And again, Shout out to Mr. Nightmare, who inspired me to start sharing these kinds of stories. Hopefully, this is just the beginning. Until next time, stay safe out there, and always check your back seat.